Hi, my name is Benedict for Higher Hertz. In this video, we're looking at the Universal Audio Spark Collection. It's a collection of effects and some synthesizers that is now just available for Windows. A lot of these devices have been around for some time with the UAD hardware, which used to be the only way you could run it, and then more lately with Mac OS, and particularly centered around their Luna DAW, which has been a Mac-only thing. Whether that's coming to Windows, I honestly don't know. From what I've heard, some people like Luna, but perhaps it's not as well featured, but it is a new DAW. So give it time, it might grow up very, very nicely. I know nothing about it because I'm not Apple afflicted. Those days are over. The big thing with UAD is that they have got to the point where they're presented in the market as though they're like the only people who do a certain thing, the only people who achieve a certain effect. We end up with a slight situation there because if we go back and have a look at the video that I made with Stephen Slate's comparable sort of a thing, lots and lots of analog devices that we can plug in to our screen, which is digital, then they say they're the best analog emulations ever, and UAD are kind of telling us the same thing. I always have issue with that. I have no issue with a manufacturer saying, look, my trousers are the coolest trousers ever. Great. If they're stripy and got buckles on them like Sex Pistols trousers, brilliant, you're winning. Malcolm, you're right. But there's a certain amount of frou-frou that has crept, well, more than crept, has bludgeoned its way into the DAW industry. It's a social thing, but I'm not keen on it. It says here, create music with the best gear ever made. That is clearly emotive. Now, fair enough from a marketer's perspective, you want to be emotive. Here, come buy my lovely car. My steak's very sizzly. All these things are emotive, that's fine. But there's a difference between saying, oh, my super red car goes faster because it's red, because yeah, that's harmless. But when we're saying mine's more pro than everybody else, or this is the only way you're going to sound like a real pro, that's manipulative. It's gone past emotive into manipulative. They say you get a collection of legendary studio hardware and instrument plugins for a low monthly price. Okay, instruments. There are two instruments in here. There's a Model D clone, which is probably pretty accurate, but as far as I'm concerned, the sound of a Model D, the Mini Moog, is that of like a Yes or a Camel or an ELP record, and by the time I get to hear them go, then that's gone through several layers of processing and tape and master and pressing to vinyl and pop, crackle and all that kind of stuff. So in terms of what a Mini Moog really would have sounded like if I was standing right next to it and had headphones plugged into it, as opposed to putting on the record, I think is probably going to be different. So ability to judge and say, oh, yeah, is hard. Does it sound good? Yeah, it sounds good. The other instrument, though, bears no relationship to anything in the past, and in many ways, I think it's the coolest thing in the pack. It's a pretty interesting instrument. I'll pop up the picture. I'm not going to go over it here, but I thought there were, while some limits, that it was a really pretty nice piece of kit that allowed you to sort of go off and do some pretty nice things. But we're going to focus more on the mixing side of things here. So these legendary studio hardware, why does that matter? And I know people are going to be leaping to go, you don't understand. It's like, well, I do understand because I started with this kind of stuff. My boss was all excited because he had DBX compressors in his studio to replace whatever he had before. It's not like I haven't worked with classic vintage gear. Used to own some of it myself. Glad I don't anymore. It's got these things and they're emulations of, and probably very good. I'm not going to get into whether they're accurate or not. They seem pretty good in sense of that. Fine. But why should we want to work with these things? I get the logic in the sense that if we say, let's go back to that Mini, if we say, oh, well, I'm using a perfectly accurate emulation of a Model D, when I go to do my Lucky Man, then I'm going to sound exactly like Keith Emerson. As I said, you're not, because there's a whole lot of other stuff going on. Assuming I could play exactly like Keith Emerson, there's a whole lot of stuff going on between him going whittle, 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 and me actually hearing that on the record. So it's a false idea. I understand that people have it, but I don't think they should. I think they do damage to themselves. So there's a lot of promise here. Like they say, okay, there's Teletronics as used by producers of Tom Petty, Prince. So some of the gear that Prince used at times was really, truly horrid. The reason that Prince records are great is because, well, A, Prince, B, the Revolution, and C, I honestly don't remember the names of his producers and mixers, but Prince never worked with fools. That's why his stuff is great, not because of a Teletronics or an 1176 or a collection of 1176s as used by the producers of Aretha Franklin, Nirvana, and Led Zeppelin. Well, they must be amazing then. If I use them, then I'm going to... Oh, God. It's a very, very flawed approach. Yes, that gear was great, but it was all that was available at the time. Yes, some people have liked to use them, and good on them. But it's not to say that more modern things and software things can't sound just as good. But the reality is often they can do so much more than these older pieces of gear could. That is why they got replaced with newer pieces of gear. Same with the compressor. Oh, well, Fleetwood Mac, brilliant. I can sound like Fleetwood Mac. Stevie Nicks. But it's stupid because, again, Fleetwood Mac is Fleetwood Mac because of Fleetwood Mac, not because of an API 2500 bus compressor. That's not going to turn me into Lindsey Buckingham and let me fondle Stevie Nicks. It's just not the way this works. So there's this huge amount of promise which we need to overcome or be swept up in which case maybe we're not really making a conscious decision so much as being swept away. An evolving collection. Okay, fair enough. I haven't been with it long enough to see it evolve. So I'll say, fair enough, we'll trust you on that, perhaps. Now it runs on native. Brilliant, good on you. That's nice. The day of farms, DSP farms is over. Someone will probably try it again. I mean, I know they're trying to try it with GPUs, but it won't last. But again, legendary UA sound. Give your recordings the pro analog tones heard on your favourite albums. This is not how it works. And besides, boys and girls, we are in a digital environment now. This is not analog gear. You can't make digital gear really sound like analog gear. Specifically, if we're thinking, I want it to sound like analog gear vis-a-vis Led Zeppelin in 72, because there's so much going on. There's a fair amount of there, which always bothers me tremendously. So we got to overcome that. So I'm going to tack some of this hyperbole and impression that it's the best you could ever get, because I've been around long enough to see people say that about Waves, and now they don't say it anymore. I've been around long enough to see them say it about Fab Filter. They kind of still say it. About Stephen Slade. That actually has fallen off a little bit. And then, of course, UAD. And there's been various other ones as well. It's like, oh, that's the only way you can go. And it's like, yeah, that's not how it goes. So let's have a look. I made this actually over in Reaper because... the plugins are VST3. There are various other formats, but in terms of VST, there is no 2.4. I spent ages getting them to scan in Reason, and it's probably part of why it took ages, because it was struggling to know what to do with them. And then there was nothing, but the second part of the program, the longer, more exciting part of the program, will be working in Reason. So I made in Reaper, just playing with them, and I wanted to play with as few as possible and as little as possible, so that the really core of the program is where I am making a mix with them to really sort of attack that idea of, are they going to make things either sound and feel better, well, really both, sound and feel better compared to what I am used to. Of course, what I am most used to is Reason. So I ended up saying, okay, I played around with the synths, and as I said, the polysynth I thought was quite charming. You know, if that appeared in Reason, I'd be like, yeah, brilliant, good on you. Really, really nice. The Mini I played with a little bit, but I've never been bowled over by Minis. I love them when they're on records and they're well played. But personally, I just don't love them. Go figure. So we've got a synth sound. It's not doing a lot, and that synth sound is actually Europa, because I wanted to be consistent, to use the same sound. So it's like, okay, if these plugins are going to make everything significantly better, let's start with a control source. So that's this sound. Here is 3 UAD plugins. Okay, I will happily say that sounds darn good. We've got, I think it's the Dimension D. I'll pop pictures up. Dimension D, the tape echo, and the Lexicon digital reverb. Does that sound good? Yes, it does. It sounds vibrant and big and fat and everything we would hope for. So just in terms of pure sound, does it work? Of course. Yes, it very much works. And then I thought, okay, it's easy to be bowled over. What happens if I compare that to Reason? So pulled up 3 devices which are a pretty good match for that. Those 3 effects, not trying to make them sound exactly the same, but to come close enough. We got this, UAD, Reason. I may have made a mistake because I was concerned that the Reason one might have seemed to, because at one stage it seemed like it was wider, so I pulled it back in and reduced some of the chorusing a little bit because I didn't want it to simply sound better because it was working harder. I may have pulled that in too much, but they A B adequately, but there is a sense of it falling flat. There's a vibrance, well, it's not fair to say sparkle, but there is a kind of real sparkle and depth and loveliness in the UAD. So in that sense, yes, it works really nicely. And the Reason effects, while they're wide and doing all the things they should, they haven't got that magic. I thought, well, okay, what would that be? And something that I know about the Reason stuff is that each device tends to do what it says it does, and it tends not to have hidden processes, or very little of it. The UAD stuff is most likely going to have saturation and possibly even tone control inside them. The Reason stuff tends not to do that. So when it's a chorus, it does chorusing, and that's it. It doesn't do other things, secretly or otherwise. That's the general rule with Reason stock devices. So what if I take that sound and add some saturation? It suddenly becomes an awful lot harder to tell the difference. Just a matter of interest. The saturator is this. There's a big video on it. I like this fella a lot. So it's just running the saturation in the tube mode because that's always fun. I let it use its auto gain because these were normalized to make them the same level so that we had little to no level influence, and then pushed it back up again. That's why you're seeing a couple of devices. So the thing is, it adds that extra something that we're getting with the UAD. There's still no possible EQ-y stuff happening in there. Whether UAD is or isn't, I'm not sure. I think it might. There are some slight tonal differences. But what we see here is that it's still possible to achieve very lovely results you might just need to add another step to do things by hand. Now, for some people, they will be like, oh, why should I have to do that extra thing? It's a bad thing and what have you. But one of the great things about digital is that I love it because I can pick and choose what I put where. With analog, you can't pick and choose the distortion and the hiss and the general muddiness that it adds, because that's just what you're going to get. So it's nicer to be able to say, well, I'm going to pick and choose what I put where. It gives me an awful lot more control to say, well, I want it to feel this, which are certain things about digital. I like digital. But it can sound a little flat and clinical and cold, in which case I can choose how much I excitify it. In terms of here, there was deliberately no extra excitification. Now, what would happen at a mix is that I would have my sound, I would have most likely that fine fella there at the end of its chain. If it were going into a bus, it might be having one of those again on the bus, and then it would have another layer of saturation or two inside the masters. So by the time it's done, it's as warm and as rich as anything could be from anywhere. So does UAD give you immediate better sound? Well, immediate, yeah, sure. Does it deliver something that other things can't deliver? I'll leave you to work that one out, but in terms of my personal point of view, I don't rightly think so. We're going to scoot over my so far perceived bads and goods and bads, and then we'll get into the meat of the program, which is where I'm actually going to walk through making a mix, or part of a mix. I'm just going to use a section of the track using only the UAD plugins that I have got come through. With this, most of them I have never opened, not seen, not used, so it's deliberate. No reading manuals, no having prepped and worked out this mix before. I have done the mix, it's on an album, but what we're going to do here is from right from the beginning, and that's going to give me a sense of, well, okay, how does it feel to use? And obviously I will give further impressions as we go along. I think I have a sense of how I feel about them overall right now. So in terms of the goods, they do sound good. And with that little bit of saturation or tone or whatever they've got built in, they sound good. And yes, you can land on them and feel relatively idiot-proof. That's a selling feature, but I don't love that being a selling feature simply because it suggests, well, if you don't really know what you're doing, should you really be mixing? Be like me, who is a competent driver, suddenly going off into World Rally Championships and getting a car with training wheels so that I can't make an idiot of myself. I'm not going to win. I'm still going to lose. And it's entirely possible I'm going to lose upside down off the edge of a cliff anyway. Those training wheels don't solve the problem. But yes, they do sound good. They make a big deal, UAD make a big deal of saying that they are real, honest-to-goodness replicas, sound analogy, of these particular pieces of kit. As I always say in these things, I don't care, because I don't think it's an achievable thing, and why should we care? Much as I love those records from 60s, 70s, 80s, in particular, where all this gear was commonly used before it was thrown away, then that's great, but it's not the sound of the 1176 that I'm in love with. It's the sound of Boz Scaggs, or the sound of Dr. Hook, or Culture Club, or whoever. That's what I'm in love with. So their accuracy is probably really very good. The concern I have with that is, why are we obsessing over this? The Opal morphing synth I am going to put up as being really rather cool. There is a lot about that I like. It's relatively simple, a few too many screens from a personal taste, but I think it's capable of quite a lot. I didn't play with it for very long, but I felt like, ooh, I could keep playing with that. In terms of the negatives, well, they say it's a suite and kind of give the impression that we're going to be able to do every mixing, mastering kind of thing that we want to do, or at least mixing thing that we want to do, but there are some things I haven't yet encountered in here. So you're still going to need some other tools. It's not a complete toolkit. I would say that Reason was a complete toolkit, as in I don't think there's anything else you need to bring in here. You might choose to bring in things, like you might choose to bring in a clipper rather than using the soft clip fella in the maximizer, but that's a personal choice. It's not a you had to do that. As I said, I think we are probably being hamstrung by the limits of the emulation. I don't care about whether my compressor is an accurate 1176. I don't care if my delay is an accurate space delay. I do like to be able to achieve some of the feel that comes from those devices, but I felt quite quickly with a lot of these devices is like, why do they work so nastily? I understand in hardware why they work that way. Like with a tape delay, you've got a record head, and then a couple of miles down the road, you've got a playhead, and then another mile, another playhead, another mile, a third playhead, and then a doohickey to move those heads backwards and forwards to change your time. That makes sense, but in a digital world, I don't see why it makes sense at all. Why emulate the nastiness? Some people will go because, fine, you're welcome to your opinion. This is my opinion. I think that causes them to probably be less functional, less usable, less versatile. It might give the advantage, as I say, of them seeming to be more foolproof. And as I've already really pointed out and laboured, the overall sense of hype about these things that you don't really need to have any skills, all you need to do is have the perfect proest, analogist, what have you, and suddenly you're going to be great. Remember, Benedict, no rally driving skills, going out into WRC, World Rally Championships, with training wheels on my car, thinking that it's going to give me the equal ability to win against whoever. No, I'm still going to end up upside down a canyon, because there's more to World Rally Championships, just as there is far more to mixing than just having the proest gear. Alrighty, let's close that down. No, we're not going to save anything on that. We are going to have a look, and this is going to be long, and it is going to be a certain amount of fluffing around, because, as I say, I'm just doing this literally in real time, have not read the manuals, will not read the manuals. That's part of my remit here. They've got to be easy to use. They've got to show what they do. Most of these is going to be the very first time that I have opened them. I have 30 years of experience, so nothing should seem too far outside of my ability, but there probably are going to be some switches that, because they seem so focused on the original analog piece of gear, probably won't necessarily make a lot of sense, but we'll work our way through that. The fact that that is the case is, in my mind, a limit. Let's have a quick listen. This is a section of a song that I'm going to work on. The song is called Noah. It's from an album of mine called Befell. The singer and guitars and some extra little bits and pieces, some of the drumming here, was done by Slava of Angel 7, or FHTH, in Angel 7 in his guise here. Completely raw. This is the album mix. And raw. Now, in no way am I looking to emulate that album mix at all. Just, as we get closer, we can sort of say, okay, has this come out significantly better? Bearing in mind, I'm rushing and I'm mixing in these things, which I would never mix in. But nonetheless, let's see what we get. We're going to loop this section and just do this section. There are a few sounds that aren't happening in this section, but rather than working on the whole song, this will just give us a little bit of a time save. Now, because these UADs are only VST3 and VST3 doesn't run natively in Reason, then I've put a Waves Studio Rack, this new free thingy, which will play VST3 devices. It seems like it's probably going to work. Hopefully it won't cause us any dramas, but that's why you see these in here, and that's what you're going to see. There's nothing in pretty well, there's nothing in any of them actually at the moment. So let's work our way through. Oh, actually, there is something in one of them, in the reverb. I took the time because I'm very fussy about setting up my reverb space first. So there is one in the reverb space.
How lonely you are.
So that's the room.
People around look at you and laugh.
It's kind of amusing how they de-blur themselves. This is the Lexington 224 digital reverb. Whether this is the 78 version or a later version, 1978 version or a later version, I'm not sure. I really am not a purist about these things. It is a little unique in its programming. There's a fair amount of programmability, but it's a little unique. We've got 8 basic algorithms and then the ability to modify them. Some things are kind of cool, like there's the solo mode, so that solo's the wet. So we don't have to worry about whatever our wet dry balance is, it's in solo mode. It defaults to solo mode for sends. Great, that's kind of cool, but if you're not doing that, then you've got a mix like this. And while again that's very accurate to the look, never use one of things, but it's accurate to the broad look of such a device, PITA. And then some things that are just, okay, I don't know what they're about. You seem to be able to set the time separately on bass and middle, control your crossover, and then treble decay. Okay, a little different, but it is cool. There's a lot of control there. Depth, I'm not sure what that's for. Again, haven't read the manual, but it doesn't make itself super clear. The numbers tend to change based on what you're clicking or what you've moved. Okay, fair enough. And then pre-delay, which should move everything back. If you want to understand reverb, I'd made 3 videos pretty well in a row on reverb across 3 separate units. This is not really any different. It's just laid out in this rather, well, 1978 sort of a way. I've left most of this stuff alone. What the mode enhancements and decay optimizations do, I don't know. Whether the manual tells us, I don't know. I would like to think that it would actually explain that rather than going the decay optimization optimizes the decay. Thank you, I never would have thought of that. So I set that sound up so it's already there, ready to go. And we'll pop that back into our masters. Completely dry. We will start with, the mix. I've just done the usual thing that I do with this. We've got drums and bass going into a rhythm bus. You'll see that the reverb send only comes from the rhythm bus. I've got to turn a picture off there. That's no good. Sorry, that was there for a moment. So we've got the rhythm bus. The reverb only comes from the rhythm bus because it should not come from these, because when we do some processing on the rhythm bus, the reverb needs to match the process sound, otherwise it delaminates. Same with all of these, so except for these because they don't actually go into a bus, they're heading to a bus over here, but it's fair enough. And the vocals go into a bus, same thing. These are just slave buses, so they are these yellow buses, but just put over here. It's a thing that I do when I'm mixing. It doesn't make so much sense on a smallish mix like this, but I'm just so used to doing it that I can change elements of the mix here without actually changing something here. So I will do a kind of a solo for our vocals.
People around look at you and laugh.
We've got our lead.
You grit your teeth and do what you gotta do.
And we're hearing that reverb. So let's see.
Until this rain finally ends. And you saw how lonely you are.
What do we want to add?
People around look at you and laugh.
Vision channel. Ooh.
You grit your teeth and do what you gotta do.
Well, that's a bit leery. I feel like my eyes go absolutely everywhere with this thing. Obviously, I've never seen a Vision desk, but it's a little explosion in a spew factory. It's I'm not a big fan of channel strips, but okay, it's busy. Let's see what we've got. Mic line levels, ins, and what have you. I'm just going to leave that one alone. We've got high and low pass filters. Okay, let's turn that on. Okay, that's super weird. And it has locked up. Reason. Okay, let's try this again.
Tell you so
There.
how lonely you are.
I have a sneaky feeling that's a waves thing.
People around look at you and laugh.
So what do we want to do? I want to roll off some here just to make sure we're
You
tidy.
grit your teeth and do what you gotta
It
do.
only goes up to 600, but that's fair enough.
Until this rain finally ends.
No big deal. I remember there being some
Tell
on
you
this, some
so
plosives.
how lonely
Just make sure there's nothing there that we don't want. I'm not worried about the top end. We've got
people
a gate.
around look at you and laugh. You grit your teeth and do what you gotta do.
I don't mind bringing that in a little sooner.
Until this rain finally ends. Tell you so how lonely you are.
Okay, cool. There is something which seems to change our
People
attack.
around look at you and laugh. You grit your teeth and do
I think I heard a
what
pop.
you gotta do.
Okay, fair enough. We can live with that. That's good enough.
Until this rain
Compression.
finally ends.
So, threshold.
Tell you so how
Okay, ratio is
lonely
brutal.
you are.
Release fast. Let's look at this attack
People
business.
around look at you and laugh. You grit your teeth and do what you gotta do.
I think I'm going to go with slow.
Until this rain finally ends. Tell you so how lonely you are.
Okay, and our ratio, we can probably pull that back so it's a little less brutal.
Around look at you and laugh. You grit your teeth and do what you gotta do.
Just controlling that a little bit more, fair enough. EQ.
Until this rain
Whoa.
finally ends. Tell you so how lonely you are.
Oh, I have to turn it on. Fair enough, I guess.
People around look at you
Okay.
and laugh.
That appears to be the boost, so that means that this is the...
You grit your teeth and do what you gotta do.
I can't say I love these controls, but fair enough.
Until this rain
Yeah, this has another option,
finally ends.
but it looks like it's either or, so it doesn't carry
Tell
your
you
settings from one
so
to another.
how lonely you are. People around look at you and laugh.
It's maybe this one...
You grit your teeth and do what you gotta do.
Give him a little bit of...
Until this
Down there.
rain finally ends. Tell you so how lonely you are. People around look at you and laugh.
Just taking a little off there at 400.
You grit your teeth and do what you gotta do.
Is there a bypass here? Yes.
Until this rain finally ends.
Okay. There is a fair amount of sibilance there.
Tell you so how lonely.
I haven't noticed a de-esser in here. That's part of my comments about, well, it's not necessarily a full everything that you need. If I see one, great, we'll apply it here. If not, we're just going to accept that there's a little bit of up top. But I'm happy with the sound that we've got here. We're bringing a little bit more brightness and presence.
People around look at you and laugh.
So I'm happy with that. There's a lot of
You grit your teeth and
extra detail in the sort of top and the cut of his voice. Like we're hearing a little bit more sort of throat and in a positive sense. And I know that once we get guitars in, they're going to be sort of busy in that area as well. Without making him sound thin, I've just de-thickened him a little bit because he's going to need to deal with a busier mix. Okay, so that's the on-off button there. Dine. Cat food? I'm not sure what it is, so I'm going to leave that off. I'm going to say that I'm happy enough with that, but I need some echo to place his voice. As far as I'm aware here, there really is only one echo in this kit. In which case, I guess I'll be choosing tape echo. Now this is a
what you gotta do.
funny thing. Again, we can put solo just for wet stuff. Thank you.
Until this rain finally ends. You and love.
Oh, that's just infuriating. What did I have to do to fix that? I think that's the waves thing. I'm not going to blame it on UAD. I think it's the waves thing. That's just, yeah. Now, this is a tape echo, so the way those worked, as I said, they had 3 reed heads, which were separated out in space, so you can access just the tape heads, or the tape heads with the ability to go into the reverb, which is coarse, or combinations thereof. I'm going to try and keep it simple, and then we can change our delay time here in a backwards sort of a way. Why we do it this way, I don't know. Why not just give us a knob that goes from 0 milliseconds up to whatever your total time is, 1,000 or whatever. It seems obtuse to make this look this way.
Grit your teeth and do what you gotta do.
Mix is not done with a wet and dry.
Rain finally ends.
Sounds a bit gnarly.
Tell you so how lonely you are.
Okay.
People around look at you and laugh.
Alright, in terms of time,
You grit your teeth and do what you gotta do. Until this rain finally ends.
you can put it into BPM, but I never
Tell
did.
you so how lonely you are.
Now we can mix it.
People around look at you and laugh. You grit your teeth and do what you gotta do. Until this rain finally ends. Tell you so how lonely you are.
Okay. So that'll probably do for the main vocal. We do have some secondary parts here for the vocal. So I don't normally work with
On the day you set foot on your land,
Okay, that's correct. So we're
never give up, we will insist on our own fight. Every storm comes to an end, and you will see rainbow high in the sky. On the day you set foot
just trying to see if we've got a
on
different
your land,
kind of compressor type processor.
never give
Vision
up,
channel,
we will insist
bus
on
compressor.
our own fight. Every storm comes to an end.
Okay, I kind of like
And
that
you
sound
will
straight
see
away.
rainbow high in the
A little
sky.
brutal, but that's all right.
On the day you set foot on your land, never give up, we will insist on our own fight. Every storm comes to an end, and you will see rainbow high in the sky. On the day you set foot on your land, never give up, we will insist on our own fight. Every storm comes to an end, and you will see rainbow high in the sky.
I quite like the slight flattening there because
On
this is
the day
backing.
you set foot on your land,
That's annoying, that switch. Non-standard switching.
never give up, we will insist on our own fight.
Okay. Each device has different switching because obviously they came from different manufacturers and different parts of the Star Wars universe. So it's a little inconsistent. I wouldn't mind something a little more consistent, especially seeing some of them are on-off buttons, which is great. And others are like that when you have to press that button or that button, and it's like I want to focus on what I'm doing, not your GUI. Echo. Well, we know I've only got one Echo, so I just need to find the Echo.
Every storm comes to an end,
Let's try a
and
pair
you
of.
will see rainbow high in the sky.
Pull those levels back.
On the day you set foot on your land, never give up, we will insist on our own fight. Every storm comes to an end, and you will see rainbow high in the sky. On the day you set foot on your land,
Okay, I like that.
never give up, we will insist on our own fight.
So that's that one done. We'll close them down so I can tell what's been done. And this should be essentially the same thing.
Every storm comes,
Oh, I forgot this. This is Cookie.
and you will see rainbow high in the sky. On the day you set foot on your land,
Let's try a Rev 8.
never give up.
It's white with blue. That's pretty.
Every storm comes, and you will see rainbow high in the sky. On the day you set foot on your land,
Okay, it's adding a little bit of excitement there.
never give up.
Come on, keep
Every
singing.
storm comes.
Now, I've got a really high ratio, but a lot of the time it's not doing a lot. It's just when it comes, and so it's giving this sense of excitement because we've got a very dynamic performance as such. It's obviously quite processed, but then there's that point where it just sort of clamps down, and I'm happy to do that because I want this to bring excitement. It's really a case of how do these two go together. Oh, hang on, I should add some echo, because if I don't add echo to it, it's not going to have a front-back position, and that will become problematic because it'll actually be like right in the front here, in that creepy sort of looking up Ozzy Osbourne's nose sort of a way, which I don't think is very good. Now we've had to pull this right back with the other one, so I think we know what we've got to do there.
Every storm comes, and you will see rainbow high in the sky. On the day you set foot on new land, never give up. Every storm comes, and you will see rainbow high in the sky.
Like that.
On the day you set foot on new land, never give up. We will insist on our own fight. Every storm comes to an end, and you will see rainbow high in the sky.
And what happens if we move them out a little bit?
On the day you set foot on new land,
I don't want the squeaky ones to be too loud.
we will insist on our own fight. Every storm comes to an end, and you will see rainbow high in the sky.
Okay, I'm going to go with that for now.
On the day you set foot on new land,
I'm not sure whether I need to do anything, but we'll have a quick look.
never give up. We will insist on our own fight.
Hitsville EQ.
Every storm comes to an end,
So now they can sound like the
and
Jacksons.
you will see rainbow high in the sky.
Okay, they're preset.
On the day you set foot on new land, never give up. We will insist on our own fight. Every storm comes to an end, and you will see rainbow high in the sky. On the day you set foot on new land,
Okay, fair enough. That
never give up. We will insist on our own.
the aim there is just to put one process to bring them together. I don't know that there's a point there where the main lead and the chorus lead sing together, but we just want to kind of pull them together. Let's have a look at this from not there, here.
Tell you so how lonely you are. People around look at you and laugh.
Might be a little bright here.
You grit your teeth and do what you gotta do.
We know that's pretty bright.
Until this rain finally ends, and you will see rainbow high in the sky. You grit your teeth and do what you...
Fair enough. So I'm going to say that's probably our vocal done. let's have a look at these drums. I better bring them back into the mix.
You gotta do until this rain finally ends,
It's just
and you will see rainbow high in the sky. On the day you set foot on your land, never give up, we will insist on
Let's try a
our
preamp.
own fight.
oh, okay, it's one of these.
Every storm comes to an end. Tell you so how lonely you are. People around the loop
Okay, that is that one. I'm not hearing any difference. Okay, now I'm hearing some difference. Okay, that's my choices there. I hate these ring controls. Made sense at the time, but makes no sense now. Okay, I've got to turn that on. That's why they don't sound like they're doing a lot. Aggravating. Oh, that's this. Alright, now this is making sense. Okay, cool. I know in theory I should be worrying a lot more about levels, but this is all digital. I really don't care. I'm going to get to levels when I get to the end. I may be pushing into some things a little bit, but I don't have the time to worry about it.
are all in fight. Every storm comes to an end. Tell you so how lonely you are. People around look at you and laugh. You grit your teeth and do what you gotta
I wonder
do.
what happens if I chorus this bass.
Until this rain finally ends, and you will.
I like it. The problem I've got there is that there's no way to mix it that I can see. So it might be safer not to. Let's fill. Blah, 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 doesn't need a reverb. Let's have a look at this.
The rainbow hides.
Okay, that seems to be a boost. Cut or off. Oh, that's super annoying if you're just wanting to bypass.
It's rain, final ends. And you will see rainbow high in the sky. On the day you set foot on your land.
Alright, we'll say that's okay for now.
We will insist on our own fight. Every storm comes to an end. Tell you so how lonely you are. People around look at you and laugh.
Okay, this bus compressor. I'm hoping this is actually fairly fast and a bit brutal. What have we got? Threshold. Let's set that as low as we can. Milliseconds for attack. Let's go to stupid and see what we. Oh, okay. So it's got a bit of both.
You grit your teeth and do what you.
Ooh, that's nice. Just looking for groove here. I had to back off the threshold a bit because it was just so much we're getting nothing back.
Until this rain finally ends, and you will see rainbow high in the sky.
Nice.
On the day you set foot
Polite.
on your land.
Now we got that kind of
Never
thing.
give
Nice.
up. We will insist on our own fight.
Righto. That is nice. It's it's hampered by the old-fashioned look, but most compressors are designed to look old-fashioned, and without getting into all its features, it's not a unit I'm familiar with. But I got to say the setup was cool. Once I got the threshold backed off a little, it was just too hard. Looking into all these kinds of things, well, I was wanting something hard like a molot to kind of thing to give us a real thump and lurch in our groove, links and what have you, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, so basically I've used all of the core of it here. Very happy with that. Very happy with that indeed. It was surprisingly easy to use and get a really dramatic sound. How it would be in a softer situation, don't know, but I should imagine it would be okay. Now we need to get these guitars into the game.
You grit your teeth and do what you gotta do. Until this rain finally
just pulling everything but the one we're listening to. Just looking for an EQ. I don't really want to do anything much more than EQ these, I don't think. At least I don't think so. Let me... It's got an echo on it, so for the moment I'll assume it's alright. Let's go with Hitsville because I'm aware of your time. Fair enough. These are already hard pans, just because it's to be expected, I guess. Let's see what this mastering EQ is like. Oh. Let's not. So I feel like for a system that says that we've got so many things, it in some ways feels a little limited. Like, why do I need so many instances of the same 1176? I mean, I know there are different instances of 1176s, but why don't I just put them in one box? I've got one 1176 and then I can press Rev A, B, C. It seems a little odd otherwise. Let's go with this Neve preamp and see what we get. I'm not really looking for preamp. It's just with those preset EQs, sometimes it's a little harder to, at least I feel like, because I'm so used to an infinity of everything, it's a little hard to get the sense of it. It's kind of nice. That's on. Cool, I like that. I might actually go back to this first one and give it, where I've used Neve style things before, I've quite enjoyed them. There we go. Let's... Nice. Now, what do I need to do? I don't want to go doing guitars that I don't actually need to do. Solo 3. screen. Let's look at okay. Control click will send things back the way they were. Clean. That nave. I do like this. This is one of a couple of things I've really liked. I liked that bus compressor, and this is cool. I find these hard to use. I'm like, really, you probably see me squinting, trying to, with all these things jumbled up together, it's kind of like, ugh, why do we do it this way? I know it makes it look like a Neve, and that's all very pretty, and it makes us feel like we must be pro, but ugh, in terms of usability, it's a nightmare. It's harder than it needs to be. I feel like I'm struggling to do things that I shouldn't be struggling to do with in a modern day and age. So I'm just moving that. Remember with the vocals for this section, I had a pair of them, the main one and the kooky one. I panned the main one slightly to one side, the kooky one slightly to the other side. The kooky one is lower in level, so that gives me space that I'm using this melodic part over there. So happy with that. The sound of that device, I think, is great. I really like the way it feels. But again, usability is just like, why would we do it that way? Give me that sound in something that's ultra usable. I don't care whether it's knobs that look like 1976, but make them usable. Otherwise, just, your job is to help me focus on the music, not focus on like, why have we got 3 or 4 controls all jammed into one and legends written on top of each other? Yes, it makes sense in 1974 when we got to do all this stuff, but not now. There's nothing to stop us from having expansive GUI. So that's, I'm going to say, our guitars. Our synths, I'm not sure whether I'm going to do much with those because I seem to recall they were fairly well processed in the first place. So let's just see what happens as we bring them in. No, I'm going to change my mind. I think we can enliven this a little. What have we got? It's probably okay for tape echo and what have you. Why am I not hearing anything? Oh, I see. So in this case, this one. And it's obviously got echoes and stuff in it, so I probably don't need to do that. Let's try this bus to see how we go with kinder material. So we'll whack that threshold over. We're being unkind for the moment, but... let's back that ratio down. Sounds like we've got drive happening in here. I don't mind a little bit of drive in there. Let's see what happens when we pull that. That one doesn't suit. I know people rave about Pultec stuff. I find them so obtuse to use. So I rarely use them. It doesn't mean that they don't sound okay and all of that, but I just think, oh, what a complex way of doing it. Boost and attenuate. Let's see if there's any joy to be had in this fella so that you get to see it. Oh, fair whistles, doesn't it? Okay, it is bringing a very natural sense of lift in there, so in that sense it definitely works. Definitely, again, no argument with regards to the quality of the sound. Usability, not wrapped in. And usability is a fair amount of the battle. Because, as I've said before, you can really, when you know what you're doing, you can achieve any result you want. The idea is to be able to know how to get there and to be able to choose exactly where you go. I feel like the usability here would probably make me go, yeah, they might sound great, but they're too hard to use. I don't get any novelty out of it going, oh, look, it looks like an 1176 Rev A from 1964 as used by, Trevor Horn. Obviously some historical inaccuracy there. It doesn't do it for me. Maybe when I was younger and sillier it would have, but not now. What have we got in this one? Oh yeah, this is pretty cool, this part. It possibly sounds a little thin, but maybe that's a good decision. But I feel like we could give it a bit more. I definitely don't want to be chorusing it because it's going to end up all over the place. No, I'm going to use that Neve. Ain't never nothing wrong with an Eve. Most of the other stuff doesn't seem to make a difference. Sorry, that's not fair. It just doesn't necessarily seem too different or too relevant. Nice. Okay, that's pretty cool. So we're boosting it at 110, but pulling some out at 50 because I just don't need it to flub down there. That does sound pretty nice. We might try a compressor on this. What's the AE? The non-white one. Let's go into I feel like these are harder to do the groove thing with. Okay, so it's the roll off for the high. That was probably now we're getting a bit better, more I expected. All that space and it's like a tiny control. Now we can go a little bit kinder here. Maybe I have to swap these around. This is my annoyance. I'm not getting the ability to control the levels the way that I quite want. I obviously have to fiddle with them, and that can happen from time to time. Maybe just the whole thing runs hotter than that pretend minus 18 dB rule. Let's put it back in the mix. I like the brighter sound, but I think it becomes problematic. not a lead sound. Again, I'm in Cairns, which I don't like to be, but it seems amusing enough. They're the only two sounds that we've got working in the mix at that point. What have we got now? Oh, it's really just a case of balancing it all up. So... I feel like I've lost my brass. Oh no, there it is. It's there.
Never give up, will insist on our own fight. Every storm comes to an end. Tell you so how lonely you are.
That's looking pretty good. It's sounding pretty good to me. Obviously, that's as in Cairns and not having time to check it. But in terms of, does it seem like it works? Yeah, it seems like it works. So we've got all our parts done here. Some of those guitars, like I said, we really don't need to do. And same with some of the synth sounds. So, yep, mix all done. Here we're at hour 22, but I think fair enough. And let's see what we've done in terms of levels. Pretty well where we'd want them to be. A couple more dB could go in, but we'll do that on the app. So we should master it. Let's compress first, see what we get.
What I do until this rain finally ends, and you will see rainbow high in the sky. Once again you set foot on the land. Never give up, we will insist on our own fight. Every storm comes to an end. Tell you so how lonely you are. People around look at you and laugh. You grit your teeth and do what you gotta do.
Feels like a relatively minimal compressor, and not knowing that unit too well, I recognize some of the approach from other things like the ADHD. But it's limited on controls. But it's a beast that's 1 million years old. One thing that I did like is it felt like it was reducing some of the little details, pin sharp details. I felt like that it pulled them in a little bit, which was nice.
Until this rain finally ends, and you will see rainbow high in the sky.
Hitsville mastering EQ. I know that they want me to look at the Pultec again, but I don't want to. I just don't want to. Left mid program, side program, power on off. Is there a way to link? Oh yes, thank you. Otherwise I'd probably turn this one off too. The fact that they can link, okay, fine, not a problem. Mid side, we'll leave that alone. Power on and off. So what do I think we might want to do? I think we might want to... Oh, okay, so we choose between whether our bell is going up or down. At 25 hertz, we probably don't need a lot of stuff happening there. Oh, sorry, that's the... I think Waves tries to take control of some stuff. Gets thin, to be expected. So maybe that's not the tool for the job.
Tell you so how lonely you are.
I'm going to go with that. I don't know what the number is, but it's probably okay. It's not what I wanted here.
You grit your teeth and do what you gotta do. Until this rain finally ends, and you will see rainbow high in the sky. Once the day you set foot on the land, never give up, we will insist on our own fight.
Just pulling some of that middle out. It's a little frustrating for me having, you can choose this one or you can choose that one. But so be it. Or are these both dip and peak at the same time?
Tell you so how lonely you are.
No, not really. I don't think so.
People around look at you and laugh. You grit your teeth and do what you gotta do. Until this rain finally ends.
Oh, I think I worked out what these are. So you can change the frequency from normal, which is 800, to 400. So it's allowing us to double the positions here. So this was actually sitting at 50 when I was trying to do the 25. Right. Just the fact that this is in red makes me think that's dominant, but then it's been stuck on with Letraset later, so obviously someone's modification or some such. But it's having to do all that thinking, and it's like, geez. In a modern situation, you'd have a switch, which maybe even changed what the numbers look like here. So I only had to process one set of numbers rather than two sets of numbers with the subdominant numbers looking dominant. It's whatever it is.
And you will see rainbow high in the sky. Once the day you set foot on the
Probably a bit punchier there. I was doing my math there, so why not?
never give up, we will insist on our own fight.
Bearing in mind, it's headphones. I don't like making decisions in these things, but I think that's probably improved it. It's not about, am I going to make a great mix of this? Just about, how does it feel to use these things? And you get to see a little bit of how they might come out in use in a practical-ish sort of situation. I don't feel the need for any more reverb there. I did quickly play with the plate, with some of the synths, and I thought that was probably really very nice. In some ways, I almost preferred it to the Lexicon, probably because it's that thick, rough sound, which I like. But we should be putting some stuff onto tape. Ooh, that takes a long while to become unblurry.
Every storm comes to an end. Tell you so how lonely you are. People around look at you and laugh. You grit your teeth and do what you gotta do.
I don't know what any of these things are for.
Until this rain finally ends,
Okay, I assume there must be different types of tape.
and you will see rainbow high in the sky. On the day you set foot on the land,
I might be hitting it a bit hard, but
never give up. The will insist on our all and fight. Every storm comes to an end. Tell you so how lonely.
I'll be honest there and say I'm not really sure what happened with that. I would need to read the manual. There wasn't a clear sense of, wow, that suddenly made it amazing. Didn't suck, but it felt a little bit of a pointless thing to have done, to be perfectly, brutally honest. And in theory, I should be looking at some kind of master limiter to make sure that nothing goes past where we should be going past. I think this was the one. No, there was one of them that had a limiter option. That doesn't mean that it's necessarily fast enough for that. No. Maybe it was the Technotronics one. No. That must have been one of the other ones. Takes time to learn these, and again, having multiples of the same thing just strike me as, oh, the LA2A. This was one that had it, I think, but it wasn't that one. Don't think it was that one. You'd learn them a little bit more over time, but it just, again, seems... I remember it was the silver one. Well, I haven't looked at... Sorry, the grey one. I haven't looked at the silver one. Okay, there's got a choice between compressor and limiter. That's all I was really looking for, to see.
Every storm comes to an end. Tell you so how lonely you are. People around look at you and laugh.
I think it's loud enough. I don't think we need to be brutalizing it.
And do what you gotta do.
But if these things are analogy, I wouldn't expect them necessarily to be doing peak, stop, and what have you. I guess we can have a look and see what happens if we bypass this.
Until this rain finally ends, and you will see rainbow high in the sky.
Well, that's just unhelpful because it puts a big boost in. Sorry if you get splats there.
Never give up, insist on our all and fight.
Well, we do need some more level here anyway.
Every storm comes to an end. Tell you so how lonely you are. People around look at you and laugh. You grit your teeth and do what you gotta do.
Okay. So obviously I've got 3 dB raved off here, so the bypass there wasn't a particularly fair thing, just made it too loud here.
Until this rain
That's our mix. And that's our master.
And you will see rainbow high in the sky.
I like that. It's bright, it's present, it's forward. It probably has depth, hard to tell depth in cans, but I feel like it's nice. The levels are right, but it sounds big. That's a big part of that. I always wanted that to sound really big. So now the, not really acid test, but just interesting comparison will be, this is where we've got to with the UAD in a less than good situation.
Never give up, the pieces are all in fight. Every storm comes to an end.
I like them both. They're different approaches. I was very determined, I remember, when I was making that mix about getting reverbs and things that come right round. I didn't feel like I had the same kind of control just using the tools and the time, so did expect that I would end up with a more centered, punchy mix.
How lonely you are.
That's sort of quite scooped in a sense.
People around look at
That's-
you and laugh. You grit your teeth and do what you gotta do.
But I don't think there's necessarily, you got to make your own decision on this, I don't think there's necessarily any more or less sense of proneness in the results that we have here. The devices, they all sound good. A couple of them really quite pleased me. The Neve preamp emulation, I like that, but I always like those. I didn't like its usability, but I like the sound that, just add that little bit on the front and suddenly, hello. That's really cool. The API bus compressor, that seemed like a bit of fun. It seemed like it probably worked okay on the softer material. It wasn't the best example of softer material to work on, but overall, every time I used that, I thought that was quite good. The 1176s and what have you, well, yeah, fair enough, they are what they are. The Vision Channel, I just thought it did actually a really good job. I was very pleased with what it did. In terms of its look and its clutter, I was like, why do I have to look at this? Didn't use the Brigade chorus here, I'd used it before, and yeah, it's good, but the problem I found with both of the chorus units and the Studio D was that they were both kind of just, do you want option A or option B, and thank you, come again. There wasn't any kind of range of control. We couldn't say, look, I want to go super deep and really slow, or we had no real control over these things at all, which to me makes no sense. It's software. You can give us 3,000 controls if you can fit them on the screen and make sense of them. So the idea of saying, well, yes, they're perfect emulations of this, but why do I care? It's like me trying to marry Marilyn Monroe. It's a fantasy. It's I can stick a poster of her on my wall and pretend I'm married to her, but you know what? All I'm doing is kind of looking in a mirror, because she's not here, and she can't be here. All I can do is have a fantasy of her, but that's not a good marriage. It might be pleasing, but it's not a good marriage. The LAs, well, they are what they are. Again, very held up in time. It was interesting playing with the Lexicon. The Lexicon digital reverb thing was amusing. Pultec stuff, I just am never much of a fan of. Yeah, they probably sound good, but it's like, why such an obtuse process? That's nothing against the idea behind them, but just the technology makes no sense now. The Studer tape, I have no idea whether I really did much at all. Now, maybe that's a great thing. Maybe it adds some sort of magic that was just too hard to hear here, but I can't sort of say, wow, cool. The Hitsville EQs, I just don't see a lot of sense in those preset EQs. You might say, oh, but they're really easy, but why? It's not like there's going to make me sound like the Jackson 5. The Galaxy Tape Echo is probably it sounds fine. It's far from the first time I've used an Echo like that and been a bit annoyed by it. It definitely didn't make me think, oh, geez, I got to use this because this is so much better than anything I've ever used. I just found it a little bit painful to use, and that annoys me. Of course, we talked about that bus compressor. We've said I liked. That's really all of them. So while there's a big list of things here, notice how like these three really should be one. These 1, 2, 3 should be one, not several different things. The Hitsville, okay, maybe they're two quite separate devices. The Pultecs, 1, 2, 3 of them, I can't see why they couldn't be one in some sort of more sensible format. I don't know, but I don't understand them well enough. As I say, they just annoy me. That pure plate reverb, I didn't spend a lot of time playing with it, didn't put it in a mix, but I did like the sound of it. Again, I just think across the board, sound great, but I feel like, why am I having to do things in such a 70s kind of a way, knowing full well that this is not going to deliver me a Rod Stewart record. It's going to deliver me my own record that sounds like now, because guess what? I am here and now. I might be saying, like I know when I first mixed this Noah track, actually, no, sorry, I was about to fib to you. I mixed one of Slava's Angel 7 tracks. I remember sitting there sort of thinking, well, how do I want this to feel? Because he'd got his really brutally forward mix, and I wanted to do something different. And I'd listened to a pretty well-known in the metal community Manila Road record, and it had a really nice sort of early 80s kind of sound to it, which was a lot more delicate. And I wanted to bring that kind of feel. So, I can sit there thinking about records from the past and going, look, I want to bring some of that feel, but I know that I can't make Holy Diver. There's no way I can do that. All I can do is make the record I've got in front of me. I might be thinking, yeah, I'd like some things about Holy Diver I'd like to play with here, but using Dio's desk, Dio's nose picker is not going to get me any closer to Holy Diver than that fantasy of me sticking a picture of Marilyn on the wall and going, oh, I'm married to Marilyn Monroe. So, in terms of, do they sound good? Yes. Are they easy to use? Well, they're as easy or hard to use as the original gear was, sort of. Except you can have an infinite number of them because they're software. Do they sound analog? Well, how could they? They're digital. Do they sound good? Again, yes, but they just are what they are. Is it good value for money? Well, I don't know. I think at the same price, because I think it's $20 a month, but at the same price, you could be getting Reason with a whole lot more things which have a much broader range of what they can do. Just the chorus alone. Like I said, you can set the delay time, you can set the depth, you can set the rate, you can set the feedback, you can set quite a lot of things, the width and the mix, and then it's got 4 separate modes with the little push buttons along the top. So there's a lot more power and versatility in that device. But 2 things. One, you need to know how to be able to set those knobs to get different kinds of results. And if you don't know, then it's easy to make a mess, to overdo it. Is one thing, and that's not the fault of the gear. People blame the gear, but it's not the fault of that. Again, that's like me going into World Rally Championships with my little Kia Rio and wondering why I lose. Blaming it on my Kia Rio is not fair. The buck is here because A, I've done no rally training, and B, God didn't bless me to be a rally driver. I could be the world's best rally driver, and yes, my Kia would become a problem then. But until then, my Kia is irrelevant. You could put me in the world's fastest Evo Rex, and I'd still probably lose because I was upside down in a ditch. So don't think the tool's going to get you there. You need your skills. Get your skills up, and tools like this won't improve your skills. They're designed to flatter you and allow you to flatter yourself. Again, that's marrying a picture of Marilyn Monroe. It doesn't get you, well, anywhere at all. Your business. So play with them if you really think you're going to get something so much better from them, but please don't allow yourself to be fooled. Think very carefully. So perhaps put them against something. Not as complex as a mix like this is my advice, but get some synth sounds, sort of things that you might use, drums, bass, lead sound, what have you, and then use your normal tools to emulate what you have heard out of here. That was saying two things. One was ability. The other is I'm pretty confident that these have some saturation built into them. It's quite consistent with the analog thing. So if your tool doesn't have saturation built into it and you compare it to one with saturation built into it, saturated one's always going to seem better. The difference is saturation. You can solve that, as you saw. Put some saturation in it. Learn how to use it. So improve your skills and make sure that you're on an even playing field before you decide, is that automatically the better way to go? Are they fine plugins? Yeah, if you don't mind the fact that they are so stuck in wherever they come from, the 60s or 70s, in their usability. Yes, it gives you this sort of advantage of being relatively idiot-proof, that you can't rightly put them somewhere that's bad, assuming such a thing exists. But that's training wheels. You can't ultimately learn to ride a bike with training wheels on it. You can get to a point where you're not falling over, but then you've got to take the training wheels off, and then you're starting to really learn to ride a bike. Before that, you're just learning not to fall over. I think that's really it. Again, my name is Benedict for Higher Hertz. Please don't forget there's higherhertz.com. If you're interested in the training side of what I do, there's a lot of material over there in terms of articles now as well, so the combo of article and video. If you have any questions about the material here, not about UAD, please, because I'm not the UAD rep, but if you have questions about the material, then ask them on down below. Once I'm aware of them, I'll be happy to answer them. And like I said, higherhertz.com. Scoot over, see what else is there, and most importantly, have a play and have a really good day.